make sure we've got the hairline sorted. I'm still bald on my website.
Are you? What, have you had a transplant or something?
Nah, I did it. Everyone else, like, you know.
Well, that's what it sounds like when you come in with saying I'm bald on the website.
I was literally bald as well. I proper bicked it. And then I was like, no, I'm just going to grow it back. It's just that it's receding a little bit. And then
Can't tell.
I just went, it's only because I got it back. But yeah, that was it really. But I see people now and they go, I looked at your website, I was expecting a bald guy. So yeah, I need to update that. Sorry.
My sides are coming in a little bit, so that's why.
Go for the French crop.
Yeah, just bring it down.
Yeah,
it's just.
Yeah.
No worries, I'm 18 again. That's all.
Exactly that.
Right, Connor, we're live.
Cool.
We're on the podcast. We had all of that recorded, so that will be going in.
Yeah, we'll get that in there. Don't worry about that.
That's fine. It's all
the natural.
Give us a little description of who you are, what you do. I know you've got a pretty interesting story and how you started up your current business, and nice to let everyone know how you got there.
Cool. So I'm Connor Harris, Southampton born and bred, and I've always been in property. So ever since when I left school, I was a nightmare at school. Hated education. And I was just always destined to sell something. I think it was just born into me.
You have the gift of the gab.
I think so, but not in a way that's like, I'm not one of these cocky.
You're not the annoying ones.
No. I'm not an annoying cocksure salesman. I wouldn't put myself in that category, and hopefully others wouldn't either.
Have a look at your Google reviews.
Yeah. Well, check them out. But yeah, so I left school. I didn't have much to fall back on, and actually, something that not a lot of people know about me is I trained as a dancer.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think going back sometimes, so at school there was a thing called Rock Challenge.
Yeah, I know Rock Challenge.
Right,
yeah.
So I was like, what is this? And where I was a bit annoyed, they were like, yeah, you can do backstage or whatever. And I was done backstage one year or whatever I'd done. I can't actually remember the story, but I remember just being inspired, seeing these people on stage, and I was thinking, yeah, I want a bit of that. Like, let's get involved. Let's see if I can do it. So I taught myself to dance, long and the short of it. YouTube, evening right through the night, watching all these tutorial videos. And back then, this is the days where, boys didn't dance. They just did not dance.
What genre of dancing was it?
So it was, mainly started with like your street, your hip hop, that sort of stuff. Because that was what interested me at the time. And I've always had a love for music. So that kind of went hand in hand. And then, I got good at it quite quickly. Went back the following year for this Rock Challenge thing. Started to butt my ideas up at school a little bit so I could do it. And got like one of the main parts in that. And then I just fell in love with performing. Like, I just wanted to be on stage. But like anything, time comes where you need to start paying bills, right? So I was training to be a dancer. I was at college. I was doing all this sort of stuff. Won loads of competitions. I was on TV. Done some really exciting stuff and met some really cool friends, really cool people. But the time came where I was like, right, I need to make some money, and I'm not going to make money in dance. And I could clearly see that the career path was very limited, especially for males at that time, which is unfortunate because I did love it. And I was like, I've got no qualifications here. What can I do? I can sell. Let's have a look at what I can do. Apprenticeship comes along, and they were fairly new at the time. And then I just chose one off the website. And the first thing that kind of struck me was estate agent. I was like, sell houses, I sold sandwiches at school, I sold cans of Coke at school, and it just went from there. I started my career in lettings, moved into sales, worked up the ranks in some corporate businesses. I hated the corporate bullshit. I was just not a fan of it at all. Going to board meetings, satisfying P&Ls, meetings for meeting's sake. It was just not me. I just fell out of love with what I fell in love with when I first started the industry, which was customer service, passion for property, and really getting to know people and building relationships. And the thing I loved about estate agency the most is the fact that it puts you on an equal platform to get to know people that you wouldn't normally in everyday life. 1 minute I could be letting a property, which is a studio in the centre of town, which will attract like students. Next minute, I'm stood in a multi-million-pound property talking to a millionaire, billionaire. And that for me was crazy. And I've always been a bit of a sponge to my environment, wanting to learn more, get to know things, or question everything, similar to how we got in touch, right? And I have no qualms in asking a silly question, because I think that you can learn from everyone and everything. And that was why I loved it so much, because I was just diving into these people's lifestyles and lives and finding out what they did and how they got to where they were. And yeah, just fell in love with it. So throughout the kind of career journey up until Marco Harris, which is the business that I launched, it's been all working for other people. And the same thing happened time and time again, where I'd become more and more frustrated with the red tape, the process, and it becoming more about the pound note than the customer. And that was just not what, it wasn't the flavor of estate agency that I enjoyed. Time was up. I was working for a company called Purple Bricks. I don't want to give them too much airtime.
I think everyone's heard them on TV or something. I've heard that before, a few jingles.
Yeah, so they tried to disrupt the property market, and to be fair to the brand, they done really, really well. It was an exciting brand. It was a disruptor of the marketplace. It was trying to, change the way that estate agency was done. But it just never clicked. It never got to the point where it was going to absolutely take over and be the go-to and take away from the historic people-facing business of this sector. And when I joined the company, it was very much an independent feel. The owners were still heavily involved. It was then floated, and it become increasingly corporate, more and more corporate, and something that I didn't really want to be a part of. And having worked at several firms prior to that, I was like, you know what? If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So time was of the essence. Mark, my business partner now, Mark Norman, was working with me at Purple Bricks. We made the decision and we said, right, okay, in 6 months' time, we're going to launch this business. And we did. 3 months later, pandemic hits. So that's the story leading up to it, really. And that's how it all kind of evolved. But we're now sat here 3 trading years later, with what I still feel is one of the most exciting local businesses in the housing sector. And, our reviews speak for themselves. Our customers are it's so different to the approach that you get with these general estate agents that are on the high street, because it is so much more personal. Everyone within the business is super, super passionate. And we run the business internally completely different to the way that your normal estate agency would. And I suppose one of the biggest things or biggest reasons behind that is having worked in a typical estate agency sales environment. People have got kids, people have got dogs, people have got gym memberships that they want to use, right? And typically the estate agency hours for an individual is 8:30, 9 o'clock till 6, maybe 7. And that's 6 days a week. So actually the work-life balance was completely incorrect. And we all know what it's like. During your working day, you get to know your body. And at some point you have a low where you're not going to be on your A game. You're not going to be giving 110%. So why not give the flexibility to that individual? Go to the gym, go for a dog walk. And we don't have, set office hours as such, so that we can enable our staff to actually enjoy a nice work-life balance, get to see their kids, take their dog for a walk, go to the gym. And they can do that during the day, because generally speaking, our golden hours are 6 till 10 at night, where people are sat on their phones, on their laptops. And that's the time where we can capitalize. And it works because our competition are in bed, or they're having dinner, or whatever they're doing.
That's a fair point.
So that's one of our, I suppose, one of our aims was to just change the internal culture of our business to make it more of an enjoyable process and career for people, and very different to what all of us have experienced in different agencies, but we're all highly experienced individuals as well. That coupled with our 2 other parallel focal points of the business that we knew that we needed to double down on and get to a space where no one else could achieve, which is marketing. And secondly, the customer service and communication. And that all rolls into kind of one with the offering that we offer. So as it stands, we have combined just shy of 8,000 immediate reach for our 2 social media platforms, which, as far as I know, when I last checked in Southampton, there's no other agency that's rivaling us on that.
Oh, brilliant.
And the exposure that gives to an individual and their property is huge. We can reach thousands of people within hours of a property, going live. And the beauty of the platforms is they're growing in popularity, not just with the millennials of this world, but with the older clientele.
Yeah, definitely.
And we've seen a shift change, especially post-pandemic, where people are searching for property in a different way. You know, not everyone goes, I'm gonna buy a property and then go straight to Rightmove and Zoopla. They do loads of different tasks before they even get to that stage. And actually, we're capturing customers way before that, because we've got people that follow our platforms that are seeing properties that are, I suppose it's a lifestyle thing, right? We're effectively selling a lifestyle to someone, and when we're putting our marketing up in front of someone and it's on their screen, they're falling in love with it and it's making them feel a certain way.
I suppose as well, it gives the customer a sense of urgency as well, because they can see this property being listed up. They can see it's got a couple hundred likes or a couple thousand views. They think, all these other people are going to see that this is a nice place. I need to pick the phone up and show that I'm interested.
Absolutely.
Before it gets off the market.
It's FOMO. Yeah. It's literally FOMO.
Thing.
Yeah, it is real, 100%. Property market, more so. And at the moment, you know, the market's slightly changed now as we sit in January 23, but last year, certainly, it was massive because the market was moving so quick. Everyone had a fear of missing out. You know, if you weren't quick to your inquiry, quick to see the property go on, you're not going to buy that house.
No, I do remember before all this, I don't know what you'd sort of call it. Everyone's sort of like, house prices are slightly going down, aren't they? People are sort of, I mean, interest rates are going up. People are worried about what's to come in the future. But before then, leading up to that point, well, you can speak better than this. Houses were going way over list price, weren't they?
Last year was crazy. Absolutely crazy. The last 2 years, really. So as soon as when lockdown happened, the business was shut effectively for 4 or 5 months, and that means no transactions could go through. When the solicitors shut down, that was it, game over. So you can imagine, right, the amount of transaction history and the amount that we know happens on a yearly basis, that was completely jolted and stopped for a period of time. So when we came out of that period and we could start transacting again, you had this pent-up demand of all the people that wanted to move 5 months ago that couldn't, that now want to move. On top of that, you think about all the people during that pandemic that were locked down, still had incomes coming in. Yeah, it might have been, you know, on the scheme of 80% or whatever the case may be, but their outgoings just dropped off the face of the earth. So we saw more people save more money in that period than, you know, what we were used to. So that brought more buyers out. So all of a sudden we've got this double wave of new buying clientele. And then we also had a lack of stock mixed into that. So this recipe now was just an absolute disaster. But it was kind of a good one, because then, you know, Rishi Sunak come along and just put the cherry on top with a stamp duty break. And oh my God, like the market was crazy. We were, you know, we couldn't have a house on for longer than 24 hours in some instances.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you're talking 20, 30 people that want to see a property inside 24 hours of that particular one going live. And 20% of our stock last year was sold via Instagram.
Really?
Yeah, 20%. So that's going to climb.
What did you have to sort of take a step back when you were in that such busy period and think, we can't let the mindset slip into this is how it's always going to be?
Absolutely. Like, you know, I think good business owners, in my opinion, will always think ahead and always plan ahead. And, you know, with our business, because it's pipeline sales, you know, they're not a given. You know, they have to complete a process before we actually monetize on the transaction. We had to think in advance. So, you know, what was the next step? What's going to happen? This bubble's got to burst at some point. And actually, as soon as that mini budget happened, I think it was October last year, just before Christmas, that lead up just before Christmas, the bubble burst, and then it was like a trickle effect of it just slowing and slowing and slowing. So we planned for it in advance. But I think the one thing that you'll see this year is, you know, people have to evolve, businesses have to evolve, and tough times create opportunity. And I think if you're strong and you're an outside of the box thinker and you put yourself in positions where opportunity will come, good karma will come around and help you.
Yeah, I got asked the question, do you feel lucky? And my response was, well, I feel like a lot of luck in the terms of business it's sort of the unrecognised actions you take that have led you to the point that you are at now. So all those times you got up to check your emails that early, all the times that you've gone to just make sure all the listings are up perfectly, all the times you go above and beyond, there's going to be a point when, oh shit, there's this email in here that someone wants to buy a house and they're looking to move ASAP, and there's always a bit of luck that will be there as long as you're there for it to present itself.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You create your own luck through your efforts, I think. And I don't know, is it the property market's crazy because it's such a simple, if you think about it and break it down, it's such a simple process. You find a property or someone who's willing to sell a property. You try and, bring that to the market. You bring it to the market, you sell it, you move new people in, and your job's done. Well, in most cases, people will see that as job done. It's the aftermath of what happens next and how do you keep that customer in, with Marco Harris or our brand or your brand at their heart, mind and soul for the duration of the lifetime in that property, because they're going to sell again at some point, maybe. And if they do, how do you keep hold of that customer? So the journey lasts a lot longer than what a lot of people anticipate or would in the estate agency sector. And I think for us, we've built a business that's been really geared toward the millennial market, which has been good and bad. And I think in years to come, it will pay its dividends. If you look at some of our main competitors in Southampton right now, there's some agents that are absolutely killing it. There's no two ways about it. There's unbelievable independent agents, slightly larger ones, slightly smaller ones. And I think all of them have got their own, they're onto their own good stuff in certain ways. But I still feel that there's a lack of, there's a lack of involvement. There's a lack of willingness to move with the times, which is where we see an avenue to ride that storm in the middle and try and capture the audiences that these others aren't capturing. Because they're, you've got to think how many property there is in Southampton and how many of them owners are not millennials. But when they're millennials buy, and then in due course, 6, 7, 8 years, 9, 10 years down the line, when they come to sell, and all of a sudden they're now our elder clientele, what's happening on that side is the agent that's geared up towards the older clientele still going to be the agent of choice for them? No, it's going to be the person that gave them a great service 6 years ago.
And as well, it's the mindset they grew up in as well, because times do change. So I wouldn't say it's more of people's minds change over time. It's just the time that their mind changed to, and that's the mindset they're not stuck with it, but that's the inherent sort of theme of how they think. And if you can build your business to the people that are in your age group and then grow up with that, you're always going to be there for them. You're always going to be the first sort of people they think of because you think like them.
100%. And that's like, it's such a funny point, because if you think about the way that you book holidays, when was the last time you walked into a travel agent and said, I'd like to book a holiday?
I've never walked into a travel agent.
So, but that's showing of age, I think. If you speak to your parents, grandparents, once upon a time, they would have booked a holiday in a travel agent.
Yeah.
I remember, walking in Southampton down by JD in the big bit there. I can't remember what it's called, but there was a travel agent there, Thomas Cook or Tui or something.
Something like that, yeah.
And I remember walking in there and sitting there with my parents waiting for them to book a holiday. That's crazy. And same thing was when I was growing up, it was a big thing to go out for dinner. It was a treat at the weekend. I remember going to these pubs. I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. I don't know, your local pub. I can't remember the one on Botley Road. It used to have like a playground. It used to have go-kart. This is like the best place in the world. Nowadays, you can have your dinner on your doorstep, 5-star food from a guy on a bike, and it be convenient, and you don't have to talk to one single human being. You can now book a holiday within seconds and not pay straight away. Like, that's how much we've moved on.
And then find literally the cheapest flights out there without even having to pick up the phone. Like you say,
Correct.
go to travel. Like Skyscanner is my best friend. I will sit there on Skyscanner just thinking, I could go there for 20 quid. I could go there for 15.
Absolutely, right? And this is like the sign of the times. And this is where I look at it and I go, look at the estate agency sector. What on earth has happened over the last 10 years? Like, not much. Yes, people have come in to try and disrupt it. The marketing's still shit, in my opinion. You know, people are still putting properties on Rightmove and Zoopla where the photos have been taken on a phone, which is that's criminal. And people want convenience. And the more we progress through the years, the less, people don't want to talk on the phone. How many times do you get like the younger clientele WhatsApping you and, sending you voice notes? They don't even know what voicemails are, some of these people. They don't want to talk on the phone. So you have to cater for your custom. And that's what we're trying to do, is build a brand. Yes, we still will sell someone's house if they're an older owner. We can still cater for that market, no problem at all. But we need to evolve and we need to look to the future. Artificial intelligence, we spoke about it before this podcast. That's a game changer. How is that going to affect the property market, and what's going to happen next in the property market with artificial intelligence? Meta, me and you will probably be good at, 100%. Like, me and you might never buy a house on Earth again. We might buy one in the metaverse.
Yeah, it's crazy. I want to start a podcast in the metaverse. I think it's already been done, where people can put their goggles on and then just sit in an audience.
Crazy.
But I don't really know where to start with that. I probably should just Google it first and something will come up. But
speak to some of your friends on Instagram, put a note out like I did with reaching out to you, and someone will know something.
That's a fair point. I want to take you back because we seem to have a lot of similar viewpoints during the process that we were working for someone and then decided to start something of our own.
Okay.
You were mentioning about the sort of corporate atmosphere and how that sort of dictates how you should conduct yourself. When in reality, for me at least, it feels like the corporate atmosphere is just this void where people get into a corporate job and then they think, oh, well, this is the way I have to behave. And everyone thinks that way, so that is just the way you behave. And it sort of knocks down the wall of being able to build up personal relationships, because I feel like the corporate atmosphere is very much like a dog-eat-dog atmosphere. It's very much everyone's out for themselves, which is nice to see that you're bringing a lot of the flexible work week. That's a nice thing to see, because that almost abolishes the corporate sort of feeling, because people are actually living their lives, and it's not living to work. It's you work to live. It's the complete opposite way around. And being able to, like you said, walk in one day with a student and then the next day with a multi-millionaire, like that in itself is valuable, because it brings people closer and reminds people that we are all just the same. Just because you've got a bit more dosh in the bank, or just because you've got this thing on a piece of paper that says you've got a doctorate in something, it closes all the gaps. Like it makes everyone on the same level playing field.
Yeah, I think the corporate environment, you're absolutely right, hit the nail on the head. It kind of it molds you to become a certain way that they want you to become, because it's been tested with data and tried and tested, and now they know it works, so you've got to do it this way. So when you value a house, I'll use the estate agency sector. It's only right I do, because that's what I know. In certain companies, you'd go on training on how to value a house and how to, I suppose, pitch to that customer about what it is you do. But let's be frank, right? When you buy a product or a service, if you have human interaction to purchase whatever it is you're looking for, you buy from that person. You know you want the product or the service, because you wouldn't be in that situation if you didn't. But if you had an opportunity to shop the market and you went to two different shops, same price, you would clearly choose the better service than you would the poorer. And that was kind of where I was like, people buy from people. They don't buy from the brand in the property world, in my opinion. The brand might get them through the door, but if that person's not personable, doesn't listen, no empathy, you're not going to use them to sell your house, because you need to trust them. So I'm building the brand up to get through the door at the moment. And I know when we get through the door, we've got all the skills to be personal. Because I don't sit people down and say, this is the way you should value a house. I don't believe in that, because if you pick the personality right and they've got their heart in the right place and they're there to really service that customer, that will really come across in being completely straight with that customer and saying, look, I'm here for you and I want to work for you. And that's something that I think that the corporate's lost. And they built a hierarchy system and rank of how you become a successful agent in their eyes, and then people kind of gripped onto that. I think there's different ways of doing it. If you look at the US markets and their models out there, very similar to what we're doing in terms of you have a broker and then you have agents that work for that broker. So there's still some there's some evolving to do in the UK, certainly. But the corporate environment, going back to your point, it's not, it can be for some people if they feel fulfilled and they feel comfortable in maybe climbing that corporate ladder to earn a career and feel safety and comfort in having that safety net of being employed. I suppose because of my entrepreneurial fire in the belly, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel secure because I was constantly questioning and going against the grain to push boundaries, to find new ways to improve. And that's not seen as a good thing sometimes in these corporate agencies.
No, because then you start nipping at the heels of people above you. And for me, COVID sort of showed me how it's not as safe as you thought it was being in your corporate PAYE job. Don't get me wrong, like pandemic, obviously they don't come around all that often. But if you look at the people that were able to adapt during COVID, it was the people that worked for themselves. It wasn't the people that worked for someone else, because if your idea doesn't want to be heard by the person at the top, then it won't be heard.
Absolutely.
So you've got a choice. You can either stay there and hope the company makes it through and you've got a job at the other end, or you can try something new.
You've got to be able to pivot in any marketplace. I think any business, you've got to have the ability to be agile, to adapt, even more so, like you say, coming out of the pandemic and seeing that completely disrupt the whole world. You have to be agile enough as a business to be able to change your target audience, your offering, to be able to suit maybe new clientele as soon as you and as quickly as you need to. And I think the other thing with the corporate side and going independent or going self-employed, taking the leap, I was in a very comfortable position financially. I had a really nice job. It was a nice job. I didn't see much of my family, and that was the biggest fall down for me, is being, I had to work set hours, and I was being told that they were my contractual hours and I had to be, there or here within that time frame. And that led to a load of sacrifice. I've got 2 young kids, and a wife, and they there was parts of their lives that I missed, sacrificed for someone's company that I didn't have a relationship with. And that become more and more apparent as I matured as well. Certainly as my daughter started to grow older and I started to miss more things, school plays, that sort of stuff. You don't realise how important it was until the times pass. And I was like, no, I can't. Going forward, I'm not going to allow that to happen. I need the flexibility with my time. And I'd rather be time rich than money rich and get them memories in with my family. That's more important to me than anything.
They're priceless, aren't they? I grew up with a dad that was very driven by making his money. And I'm not going to sit here and blame him for doing that, because everyone has their reasons. I'm sure in his mind, he came from a first immigrant family. So they came over here. They were from Spain. They came over during the Spanish Civil War and ended up just emigrating here. So he saw how it was growing up from a family of immigrants that probably weren't treated the same as everyone else. Don't get me wrong, my granddad had a good job. He worked in a printing company, which back then was, that's the way they got the news around. Yeah. But I remember he told me, he said to his dad, because they didn't have the best relationship at times, he said, by the time I'm 21, I'm going to have twice as much as you do. And so, to me, he made the decision early on that he wanted to set himself up financially and wanted to make sure that if he needed to, he can provide for whatever family he has in the future. But when I look back to my childhood, I think, I don't really remember being tucked in and him saying goodnight to me in those first sort of 12, 13 years of my life. Most of the memories I have with him are when I got something wrong doing my maths homework and he's shouting at me because I've done it wrong maybe 2 or 3 times the same way. Or him coming on the weekend, to be fair, watching me play football. But then again, it was that mentality that he'd ingrained in his head to be successful in what he was doing, then coming out in the only quality time me and him had, which then felt like I was always under a bit of like a microscope and I needed to do everything right. So I'd be playing football and he'd be on the side of the pitch, coach me through the game, but all the parents be looking at him like, Jesus Christ, mate, he's like a 12-year-old. Calm down a little bit. And it's probably turned me into the person I am today, but it's made me think that when I start to build a family, as the same thoughts you've already gone through when you're at your last job, is, yeah, those times are priceless. And depending on how many kids you have, it's irrelevant, because it's about the time you spend with that individual child. And you don't realise what effect that can have on that child. You may think it's only a couple of nights a week, I'm not there to see them, but that is their life at that point in time. And you got to remember, they've only been in this world for like 3, 4, 5 years, when you've had 20, 30, 40, 50 years to sort of start to understand things. So the psychological effect that you not being there with your family, especially the little kids, is much more profound than you would ever understand it to be unless you've experienced it. Which is something that I am gracious for doing this, which allows me to be flexible, allows me to go and see my niece and nephew in the day, maybe if my sister's gone out, or go see my girlfriend during the day, because she works at home. So it just allows you to have that time which feels like it's quality time, instead of just having to be there because this is the role that I play in the family.
Yeah, it's 100%. We, since running the business, I'd say 98% of the time I've taken my youngest goes to nursery, my eldest is at middle school, and I've done the school run 98% of the time since I've run the business. And it might be a little thing and I'm probably shouting at them and hollering at them to get them out the door and everything else, but that forms memories. And just having the ability to do that in the mornings, it's just fulfillment for me. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I worked in an employed role or for another company, especially not in a estate agency, because the time that school starts clashes with morning meeting times. So having that ability is phenomenal. But it also works in turn for my staff. Like I said, we've got a couple of people that have got kids and they've got the ability to do the school runs. That's unbelievable. And let's be honest, it's half an hour, depending on your school run, but it's half an hour. It means so much to someone. Giving someone half an hour back to have that quality time, the response to that as a staff member, it means so much that you'll probably get more from that person because they completely engage with the fact that you're supporting them and their family.
Definitely. That hug and kiss and that I love you at the school gate is going to be worth way more in just how that makes your employee feel, rather than them getting that extra bit of half an hour in the morning to prepare for a meeting. Like 100%.
Not hug and kiss in my case though. My daughter will give me the "Don't touch me, Dad. Get away from me." She's at that age.
You got to blare the loud music when they. Yeah. My dad, the few times he did take me to school, he'd pull up and he had a convertible at the time, and I hated his rock music that he used to play. I actually quite like it now, which is ironic enough. But this was secondary school actually. Where did you go to secondary school?
Hamble.
Okay, I went to Wilden. So pulling up to Wilden, at Wilden, everyone funnels in through this one entrance, and then there's these slatted areas. It's just like two pavements where everyone's walking in the morning. You just hear like some Genesis blaring from down the road, and it's just me there like that in the car. And as soon as we get in there,
how cool is that now though?
You think about that, and I laugh at those memories now.
Yeah.
At the time, I just wanted to roll up and
I can imagine.
Die in a hole, open the door and he'd just turn it up even louder. Yeah.
So I think I'm a cool dad. Yeah, I'm a cool dad.
And you're wearing Yeezys, that's one step.
Yeah, so I'm a cool dad. Like my little girl, I think at some point will turn around and go, shit, yeah, you are pretty cool, Dad. That's what I hope. But I'm probably thinking I'm a cool dad, but in her era, I'm just like any other dad, So, but it's crazy. And I love my kids to death. Like, they are my world. And, I like to get them involved. Like, you'll see on our Instagram pages, Maya will come, in school holidays and stuff. I try and get her involved. She's talented, she's great behind a camera. She's fantastic with, her dancing and everything that she's doing right now is just phenomenal. And again, it's another thing, you know, I'm a massive family man, and I love for people's families to feel kind of an extended part of what we do. And I love the fact that we're bringing that together. But yeah, the whole, you know, family thing, I think the work ethic, I think for you probably got some work ethic and get up and go on the basis that your dad was so hard on you. And I didn't really have that growing up. I never had I had real flexibility with my parents, to a point where I could do what I want. We had a very open relationship where I would tell them absolutely everything. So they knew what I was doing, whether I was getting up to no good or bad or whatever. They knew what I was doing, but there was no, this is right, this is wrong. There was very much, you lay your own path and we'll guide you along the way, which I really respected and I loved, and I had a great upbringing. And I'm probably, because of that though, I think if I was pushed harder, looking back, I probably could have done more at a younger age, if that makes sense. I was very quick to quit in a lot of instances, which I kick myself for.
Okay, let me ask you a question on that then, because in my mind, well, when I think about how I'm going to raise my future children, I've spoken to my dad about this. I've said that I will take some of the stuff that you applied with me, but I will throw some of it in the fucking bin. Like,
yeah.
And it's probably an amalgamation of my upbringing and your upbringing, to be fair.
Yeah.
Would you say that if you were pushed harder when you were younger, you would have carried yourself down the wrong path quicker, or do you think you'd be in the right place?
That's a really good question.
Because you have the flexibility to think, to have the ideas and quitting isn't a bad thing, right? I have quit all of my jobs till I came to this, right?
Yeah,
and
you can't quit on yourself, right?
No, exactly. So before I got to this, I had that thought of like, fuck, like, I have literally quit everything that I've done. Like when I used to swim when I was younger, I quit doing the competitive swimming. I quit playing football. I quit my first, my second, my third. Like I've literally quit everything I've done, bar going to college. But then I quit from the idea of going to university. So in my head, I was thinking, I have literally quit everything. But why should you only have 2 or 3 goes at trying to find the right thing for you?
Yeah, I get that 100%. And I agree with you that people need to explore, and I'm not one for society's beliefs on the way that a individual should grow up, you know, go to school, come out of school, go higher education, go uni, get in debt, then go get a job with the uni degree that you got. Because actually the reality is that's not playing out for a lot of people, and it puts people back a step, in my opinion. You know, they've spent 4 years at uni studying something that means fuck all to them, and they're now in a position where they're in debt, paying back them debts, and on a back foot because they're starting where people started 4 years ago at the same level, right? So unless you're going to be something that might be really come across really narrow-minded, so I suppose I'll back up my thoughts on it and opinions. If you want to go and do something that requires a degree and you're absolutely tunnel vision, razor sharp focus on, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a doctor, yeah, 100%, go and follow that path. But if you're one of these people who's, you know, I heard it when I was going through that stage of where I potentially would have went to higher education. People going, yeah, I'm going uni, what you studying? Media. All right, what is it you want to do then? I have no clue. Oh, okay, cool. Like, what's the point? You're just wasting time, and that was the thing for me, is I was never pushed, but I think if I was pushed if I was pushed a little bit harder in terms of, right, Connor, you know, you can do this, let's go, I think I potentially would have been a step ahead, even in advance of potentially where I sit today. But it might have been a completely different life, so I don't regret that. But I've just taken that as a lesson for my kids to go, okay, cool, I want that open relationship, I want that trust, I want to be a friend, but I still want to be a dad, and I still want to give the best possible advice, the best guidance. And I suppose the thing that hit home for me, especially with now being a business owner, it's so true that every single day when I go out there, you know, I'm grafting in one way, shape or form. And although I've got a lot of flexibility, I've still made a lot of sacrifice in terms of my time and my effort and everything else that comes with running a business. And I want my kids to do the best possible things for them and be the best versions of themselves and have full backing and support. If my little girl says I want to be a professional dancer, I will go out there and make sure that she gets the best training, push her as hard as I can, make sure she's practicing. And that can be seen as pushy, but I think if you've got that belief that you want to do something, then you should go 110% into that lane and give it everything you've got, because then if you do fail, quit, you can at least hold your hand on your heart and say, you know what, I give it everything I got. I don't want to do it anymore.
No, 100% agree.
It's not working.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I suppose the issue really these days is that kids aren't really given the opportunity in school to find themselves, so they have to do the quitting once they 100%. Leave. Like that, like realistically, in the world we live in, not everyone's going to fit into an office job. Not everyone's going to go to university. So while they're young and still want to explore, let them explore. 100%.
And that's one of my biggest bugbears, because I think I've been very lucky, going back to luck, because I happened to go into an apprenticeship and then fall in love with that sector. That doesn't happen for everyone. You know, like yourself, you've had several different kind of tries at different stuff. That happens for a lot of people. And like you say, if we capture that earlier, you know, what advice do they give at school that's actually useful? People should learn what a mortgage is, what money looks like, what money is, what does it do? You know, what can you do with it? You know, if I knew half of the things I know about property development, property investment, how you can make money without your own money, all these amazing things and strategies to get you a leg up in society, in my opinion. If I knew all that at school, I'd have been buying houses at, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old and doing a completely different career path. And I'm sure there's a lot of people at school that could really benefit from understanding what the wider world looks like. There's no educational course for it. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Let's fill that gap.
Cool.
I'm coming to you. I'm still not bought a house, so I'd be a first-time buyer.
Yeah.
Let's roll back a few years. Say I'm coming out of college, 17, 18. What do I do? I want to buy a house. What do I do?
Good. And the crazy thing is there's so many people at 17, 18 that have that sincere question.
And it's not even me trying to put a question. Like, I literally don't know how to buy a house. So cool. I would like you to tell me.
Fine. So first thing is you need to gather a deposit. Yeah. So mortgage lenders right now, 5-10% deposit of the house price. So, you want to be having, I would say, to give yourself a nice base to go out there and get some flexibility on what you can achieve. If you're aiming for a flat, the value can be slightly lower in some cases. If you're aiming for a house, then that would be slightly higher. So let's talk average 200 grand house. Okay. Not that, it's quite tough to find someone at 200 grand now. You'll need 10% of that. So £20,000 deposit to put down. And that is just money to go against the mortgage. Yeah. Once you have that sort of savings, it kind of doesn't stop there. As a first-time buyer, you won't be paying stamp duty. So you don't have to worry about that. But you go on.
Quick one. What is stamp duty?
Stamp duty, land tax. It's a tax. It's a tax. Government, it's a tax. So you're paying the government the land tax for the purchase of that land that the property you're buying sits on.
Right, okay.
Make sense?
So is that has a predisposed value regardless of the house being there and you pay tax on that? Or
it's done on percentage.
Percentage, okay.
And it's percentage of value.
Right.
So, and that will, the percentage of what you pay will depend on your personal circumstance.
Okay.
i.e. first-time buyers won't pay stamp duty. If you've got two property, you'll pay a heightened amount because you've got the privilege of having two.
Okay.
It's a money-making scheme. It's the government. Okay. Come on. Cool. So that's stamp duty. So you don't have to pay that as a first-time buyer. You then have your solicitor costs that you need to account for. So a solicitor, generally speaking, for just a purchase, you probably want to be putting away about 1,500 quid just to be safe, just in case there's anything else within their process that might come out that you have to account for that you didn't on their first quote. Does that make sense? One thing I will mention, especially as a first-time buyer, some solicitors will offer an insurance, which is, it's got various different names, but they'll offer an insurance for an abortive sale, which means that if you have a fall through on that property, and let's say you're a week away from actually purchasing and exchanging, you would have spent all of your solicitor's money that they have quoted you. So let's say it's £1,500. If you get to that point of exchange and the vendor or the seller of the property you're buying pulls out, you've just lost £1,500. gone. Some solicitors will offer an insurance that will cover the cost of that.
So would you say take that every time?
100%. As a first-time buyer or even as a house mover, if they offer that, the market's volatile, and we work in a system where it's not done until it's exchanged, and that exchange can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months at the moment on average. So anything can change in 6 months, and if you do change that and you've just lost 1,500 and you literally are to the penny saved for that house purchase, you need to then go and find another £1,500 to pay for the next one. So that's your solicitor cost. Definitely take the insurance if it's available via the solicitor. You then have to account for the move-in. So whether you're getting people to move you or not, removal companies, or you're going to put it in a van or rent a van. And then the thing that I would consider is speaking to whoever's sorting out your mortgage about when the first repayment's going to come out, because this is the bit that potentially may sting you. So my experience with it is it's usually you'll pay nothing for about 6 weeks, depending on when you move in, and then you'll get a bigger bill, which will be your first repayment on that mortgage, and then it will go to the normal repayment amount for the rest. So it's just something to be aware of, to account for. And then the second lane to buying a house is obviously the financial lane, which is your mortgage, right? So your best bet is speaking to a decent broker in advance, way in advance. I'd say, if you're thinking of buying somewhere and you've got no money in your account at all, that was probably the best place to start. Speak with an independent broker that can give you advice on how much you need to get a full sale through, and what that kind of financial plan looks like for you over the next 6 to 12 months. They will also advise you on what you need to be looking like from an accounting point of view. If you're a sole trader and you're freelancing, you're going to have different requirements to someone who's on a PAYE employed contract. So knowing where you stand financially way in advance is a really good position to start with. Once you know that, you can then execute a plan over the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, whatever it is for you. Get yourself into a financial position to then go out there and start viewing property.
A bit of advice from my end for the sole traders. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong here. Even if you're not earning enough to get taxed on, you need to be putting in your tax returns at the end of the year, because am I right in saying that from a PAYE individual to a sole trader is something from 3 months of income from your PAYE job versus 3 years worth of accounts for a sole trader?
So I am not the best person to answer that, simply because I can't give financial advice.
Okay, fair enough.
So what I would say is it will vary dependent on the lender, I think. So I don't think there's any set rule. I wouldn't suggest there's any set rule. But speak to an independent broker. They'll be able to give you that financial advice.
Do your tax returns anyway. It's just better to have
do your tax returns, 100%.
I tell you when the tax returns bit me was during COVID, and they were doing the sole trader scheme where I can't remember what it was because I didn't get accepted to it because I didn't have 3 years worth of books to present them. I only had like 1.5 or 2, and they just outright declined me. I've been told that people did get it, but I was outright declined, so I was just on my knees.
I think it all comes if you are self-employed, sole trading, business owner, whatever the case may be. Speak to your accountant as well. They should be, if you've got a decent accountant, they'll be able to tell you what you do.
Of course.
Need to do in order to get yourself in a position to to be preferred by lenders and what they look for. So they'll be able to help you as well.
No, fair enough. You mentioned apprenticeship that you started getting into this. I didn't even know they did apprenticeships for real estate.
Yeah, 100. Well, at the time it was a customer service apprenticeship.
Okay.
But it was just placed within an estate agent.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it was just, there was a customer service in a coffee shop. There was a customer service one in retail. But I chose estate agency because it had a sales attachment to it. They still offer them. We will be looking to do an apprenticeship scheme internally soon.
Oh, brilliant.
I think it's a great way of giving young individuals opportunities to get into jobs that don't particularly want to carry that, society path of going to uni and whatever else. If they don't know what they want to do, come and get involved in a working environment, see how the real world works, understand what money looks like and what it feels to earn it.
Yeah.
Give yourself some work ethic.
Yeah, I find these days, with my own personal experience, that it's so hard to find a good employer that will allow you to build that hunger to work harder, to achieve more. There's so many empty promises for these young starters, apprentices, trainees, whatever you want to call them, in these companies that probably don't have any business in hiring apprentices. It's really just, in my eyes, cheap labour. It's hard to find those companies that actually want to bring you on and develop you. Once you find them, you should really count your blessings and make the most of the time you have there. Because, I mean, I found at least one on my way, and although I didn't stay with them, it allowed me to get an understanding of how those types of individuals work within a business, how to conduct myself over emails, how to just present myself to a customer, etc. So it's, if you do find one, you need to take advantage of the time you had. And from what you told me, you'd be the perfect candidate for an apprentice.
Yeah, 100%. Like, if you want to learn, I suppose, you know, it's kind of, I treat a estate agency like a trade, because if you look at, you know, it's a skill at the end of the day. You know, the sector, in my opinion, it is a skilled job, but it takes years to learn. You know, it's like being a chippy. You can't just go out there day one and start fixing up houses. You have to learn your trade. And I think it's a great route to employment. And it's great for employers. You know, for me, that employer at the time got a 12-month probation period. You know, they got to know me on an in-depth level for 12 months to work out whether I was going to be the right fit for their company. They didn't have to employ me at the end. It was a 12 months fixed contract.
That's a huge probation. Is that normal in?
Well, no.
In
I'm using that as an analogy, because ultimately,
okay.
your probation period on employment is usually 3 or 6 months or longer, depending what the role is. But what I'm saying is, your apprenticeship only lasts for 12 months on my one, in my case. But for that 12 months, the employer had full judgment on me. If I didn't, you know, step up, I wouldn't got a job at the end.
No, sure.
But by 6 months, I was super keen, and I was like, I'm going to get a job.
Yeah.
So I went and proved myself and done what I did to stand out and make sure that I secured employment at the end. You know, that's not going to be the same for everyone. But it's a good way to try things at a young age and find out what does fit for you.
No, very true. Very true. Do you think your I don't want to put this in the wrong way, but your ability to be comfortable with you getting into that dancing scene when you were younger, because I'm sure that was going against the grain of like
massively
everyone in your school. Do you think that, as looking back on it now, has provided you with the confidence to present yourself to those individuals that in any other working environment you wouldn't really have any business stood next to?
Yeah, I was talking, I used to dance at your school, funnily enough.
Okay.
So I joined a contemporary dance company called Zoe Logic. Not Zoe Logic, it was called Fuzzy Logic at the time.
Okay.
Zoe, who was the founder of that business and dance company, phenomenal lady. And the concept of this dance company was to work with at-risk youths that were running off the rails, doing all sorts of stuff. And she'd bring them in and show them the world of contemporary dance. And at the age of 16, I had the privilege of being kind of, I suppose, seen by that company, and her telling me that she'd love for me to come along. And then spent a good 3 years training with that company. And we travelled the UK, as well as going over to Africa at 16 and working with a massive charity and raising awareness for HIV and baby dumping, which is what they call it. Apologies if that's the wrong term, but that was what it was called when we went there. So it was, you know, families with unwanted babies, just literally leaving them, as well as HIV. Now at 16, that knocked the life out of me in terms of what I thought I wanted in life, what I took for granted, and what I had on my plate at the time. All of the problems that you have in the UK as a 16-year-old lad going off the rails become background noise when you see some of these individuals in shanty towns visiting the orphanages and doing work with people that are dying and raising awareness about a really, really bad illness and disease. Yeah, it was crazy. And that was, I suppose, the point where I was like, right, dance is going to give me platforms to do stuff that's going to completely change me as an individual and my mindset and who I am. And if I didn't have that, I potentially wouldn't have had the route that I have had today and where I am today. But what the confidence that it gave me as an individual before going to that event and before going to Africa on tour, I was very, arrogant, young, irresponsible, didn't really give a shit about anything other than myself. I was a selfish kid, teenager, whatever you wanted to call me at the time. And when that eye-opener happened, I started to appreciate everything that everyone's ever done for me that I didn't appreciate before. Understand, actually, I've got some skill here. I've got some ability. I can do something great with my life. And I don't have to go down the route of what I was going down. Let's turn it on and let's use some of this confidence that I've now found to make myself better. So going back, that was the longest answer I've ever given in my life to a question. But going back to your question, did dance give me confidence? Yeah, absolutely. And it's helped massively with my career, with my ability to speak, with my ability to articulate my feelings, with being open, and also stepping into spaces and having a confidence when not many young males would, because I got comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. And that for me was that's a feeling that brings so much, I suppose, fulfillment to someone. It's crazy, and it's helped big time.
See, being able to just dance when like in front of a group of people without having those voices in your head stop you, to me, for a bloke, is almost like a superpower, because I'm sure if any men listening to this, and I've felt it, imagine when you're in a club and you haven't had any drinks yet and you think about getting on there and dancing. That's like the last thing you want to be doing, because you don't want to make yourself look like an idiot. And if you can just do that, well, obviously you're not going to look like an idiot because you can dance, but just be able to get on the dance floor. Like for me, I would rather go and sit down and have a board meeting with a CEO than go and dance sober in a club. Like that is how mentally and emotionally challenging just doing what you've already overcome when you were like, how old were you again when you said you started dancing?
15.
And in fairness, that's probably the hardest time to do it, because that's when you're getting judged the most.
100%, yeah. And the group of pals that I grew up with, that I'm still, like, we're still really close. We've got a WhatsApp group. We still speak. There's like 16 of us, and we're all in the same circle, sort of thing. And even to this day, yeah, I've got some banter. Don't get me wrong, but they're great. They're pals, and they would always support me no matter what. But the grief that I got at that stage was, it was mad. And there was times where I had to check myself and go, Connor, are you all right? Are you okay? Like, do you really want to do this and put yourself through this torment? But I enjoyed it. But the thing is I was good at it, and I knew that whatever I do in life, if I'm good at it, no one can laugh at you. No,
that's true.
Does that make sense? You're going to be better than them. You're going to be better than them, but also if you are good and people aspire to be like you or want to go, actually, fair play to him, he's pretty decent, then, what can they say?
I always think back to when you get sat in your first like celebration assembly and you see those people walk on and they're about to start dancing, and you sat there, you're not thinking, oh, what a bunch of fucking weirdos, and you're thinking, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And they start doing it and they're good, and you're like, yes, that was amazing. Like it gets you going, and you forget about that when it becomes your time to perform in any situation. Yeah. You forget about that. You start thinking of all the horrible things that you're going to say to yourself, and you think everyone's going to say that around you, when in reality people are probably thinking, how the fuck has he got up there and done that?
It's the adrenaline, like it's having that energy, that build up of, oh shit, I'm going on stage, or it's the same thing with running a business. And I think that's why I love what I do, because each day is different. Every time there's a challenge, it's that energy, that pressure that you need to get this done. And, don't get me wrong, everyone has down days, and everyone has, periods where they struggle with their mental health and so on. And, I've been there, but it's about how you react to them situations. And I couldn't do it now. You ask me to go and do it now, there'll be no chance at all. The best you'll get is a pint and a daddy two-step. That is it at best, yeah. If I've had a fair few, then, you might see a little pop and lock or something.
Little pop and lock.
But, yeah.
We are at an hour.
Okay, cool.
Now, Connor. How does that feel? Does it feel like we've done an hour?
No, I don't really. It's cold in here, though.
It is a bit.
Yeah.
You can see the radiator is broken in it, so we need to get that fixed. I think we're gonna wrap this one up, Connor.
Cool.
I want to end it by giving us red flags when you when you go to an estate agent, what are some red flags that makes you think you should probably get out there and find another one?
If they're wearing suits. If an estate agent is wearing a suit, consider what you're doing in that place. If you're selling a home in Southampton, there should be no reason why that estate agent is wearing a suit in this day and age. Yes, we're professionals, but are you going to get the best advice from someone who's suited and booted? The reason I'm saying this is every single one of my competitors wear suits. So I'm going to be the only choice of agent that you've got when you want to come and sell your home. But no, generally speaking, that was me playing around. Biggest red flag for me is it's just about the person, you know. If you get the vibe that you can't trust that individual or they don't have the agenda set straight on giving you the best result, you'll know. So just dive into that individual who's going to be working with you, talk about their strategy, talk about how they're going to work with you and what they can expect. And if you're not quite sure or you don't quite feel right, then don't do it. Go with your gut and find someone that you can trust.
Brilliant. One more question for you. I've seen it with examples in the States where estate agents will say that they're going to withhold your offer to the client.
Withhold? Okay.
Maybe I'm bollocksing this up, like the explanation, but something, if the offer is below the asking price, they were saying that the estate agent are going to say that if the estate agent tries to withhold your offer, that is a red flag. You shouldn't be buying through them.
Yeah, okay, cool. So in the UK, the way that the offer system works is we're governed by, we have governing bodies that we have to follow their obligations as a member of whatever governing body that is. There's a couple in the UK, main one being the Property Ombudsman. And the practice that we should follow is that every single offer, verbal and written, should be projected and given to the owners. No matter how low, high, it needs to be presented for the owner to make an educated decision. If an agent's not passing on your offer, they shouldn't be doing that. That's bad practice.
Can they lose their ability to sell from doing that? Is that something?
No.
So okay, fair enough. No, that's brilliant advice, Connor. I really appreciate your time that you've spent to come and just have a conversation with me about this.
Thank you.
I know you've got a busy schedule, so again, thank you for that, and I'd love to do more with you in the future.
For sure.
You want to be starting a podcast?
Yeah.
Give the information of your business and whatever you have coming up so people know what to expect and what to find.
I'm Connor from Marco Harris. Thank you for listening. And if you want to follow our journey, we're on all social media platforms, which is at Marco Harris UK, all one word.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
See you later, guys.